Most men over 35 are losing muscle, bone density, and motivation fast. In this video, I'll give you a weekly system to reverse it, restore testosterone, protect your bones, and look athletic again without long workouts. As men move past 35 and into their 40s, recovery becomes the limiting factor for performance and progress. Testosterone declines gradually by about 1% per year from the mid-30s, reducing muscle repair and anabolic drive. At the same time, connective tissues stiffen and collagen turnover slows, making joints and tendons less resilient under repeated stress. Sleep quality also declines with age. Older adults experience shorter deep sleep phases, yet this stage is critical for growth hormone release and recovery. Combined, these changes mean the body no longer rebounds as easily from hard training. Without intentional recovery, optimized sleep and nutrition, and stress management, training that once built strength and athleticism can instead cause stagnation or injury. Focusing on recovery creates the environment for sustained performance, muscle, and vitality well into midlife. Okay, so let's dive straight into this one. And as we age, especially for men aged 35 plus and beyond, the main priority is recovery, because as we age, our recovery capacity becomes lower or slower. It's not that we can't recover, it's just that it takes longer and it's harder to recover from high volume and high frequency training. So we have to be a little bit more sensible and logical and precise with what we're doing to ensure that we continue to get stronger, feel athletic, feel good level of vitality, and we're promoting optimal hormone health, but also feeling good and looking good, right? Okay, so diving straight into recovery. Sleep is your primary anabolic window. Chronic short sleep blunts hormones, immune function, and training adaptation. Men sleeping less than 6 hours are roughly 4 times more likely to get sick after viral exposure than those sleeping greater than 7 hours, right? Prior illness equals lost training time and lower performance. So it's integral that we, as older men, focus on optimizing our sleep as best as possible. Now, there's a growing body of evidence that demonstrates that short sleep duration, less than 6 hours per night, and poor sleep continuity are associated with the onset and development of a number of chronic illnesses, susceptibility to acute infectious illnesses, and premature mortality. Experimental evidence in animals and humans suggests that the immune system serves as a key biological pathway. For instance, total and partial sleep deprivation in humans results in modulation of immune parameters critical to host resistance, including diminished T cell proliferation, shifts in T helper cell cytokine responses, decreases in natural killer cell cytotoxicity, and increased activation of pro-inflammatory pathways. And obviously, there's another graph here from that study that shows that the less you sleep, so 5 hours and less, obviously your feeling of illness or objective colds, for example, just skyrockets, right? And obviously, the more you sleep, the less that chance is, right? So what are some actionables we can take here? So looking for 7 to 9 hours in a dark, cool room. Now that is really the top end of sleep. I know that can be quite difficult for a lot of people, but I think as a minimum baseline, you have to be aiming for 7 to 8 hours. And if you can sleep for 9 hours one day or two, then brilliant, right? Obviously keep that in a cool, dark room. Ensure that caffeine is cut off 8+ hours pre-bed. Alcohol 3 to 4 hours pre-bed minimum. I would go as far as saying just remove alcohol. I am not on the fence about alcohol. I don't really think it's a good thing for people to be using alcohol, and it's widely known as the most damaging drug for both the user and people around the user. So if you're really serious about your health, I would just entirely remove alcohol. And then obviously looking at consistent sleep-wake time, and ensuring late evening bright lights are off, and ensuring we're exposing ourselves to morning daylight, right? Looking at protein and recovery, aim for 1.6 to 2.2 plus grams per kg per day. Front load protein around training. Creatine, we want that really high, 0.3 grams times body weight per day, supports strength and cognition, okay? Now looking at bone density, the decline in men in hip bone mineral density, or BMD for short, typically falls roughly 0.3 to 0.5% per year from midlife. Population cohorts show femoral neck loss around 0.47% per year. Compounded over a decade, that's a roughly 5% loss in bone density. Now, what stops it? High strain resistant and impact training, heavy lifts, jumps, all increase hip spine bone mineral density in middle-aged men. Randomized control trials combining lifting with jumping improved hip BMD versus controls. Some actionables there you can take is aiming for 2 to 3 heavy compounds, 5 to 8 reps, plus 20 to 30 total ground contacts of low to moderate jumps, for example, pogos, box jump progressions, and we want to be doing those at least twice per week. And of course, touching on the nutrition side, making sure adequate calcium intake plus vitamin D status do matter, but mechanical loading is the big lever here, all right? Simply because obviously, yes, we can optimize what we're putting into our body, and that would be something to be addressed. But the reason that mechanical loading is the big lever is simply because it improves or upregulates bone turnover, right? Looking at testosterone and aging, testosterone levels in men decline by 1 to 2% per year as they age. Testosterone deficiency is associated with low energy, reduced libido, poor concentration, and fatigue. Total T, as we've said, declines roughly 1% per year from early adulthood, and classic longitudinal work shows 0.8 to 1.6 per year decline. Now, training to upregulate this, we can look at including HIIT or sprint exposure. I am a big proponent of sprint training because it increases free testosterone and power in masters athletes. Adding HIIT to habitual training raises free T and lower body power in men aged 40 to 60 also. Now, sprinting is something that most people and men stop doing once they start to age a little bit. So it's really important that if you want to retain your athleticism and improve your bone density and the turnover of your bone and boost your testosterone, I would include some sprint training. Now, that would ideally be running sprint training on a treadmill or a curve or outside. But you can train sprints on other equipment. So if you have a problem running, you could train it on a bike, you can train it on a rower, and possibly a ski erg. But obviously, the highest stimulus and highest ROI would be running, right? So some actionables there would be to keep weekly high intensity running brief and lactic. I'll explain some of this in the upcoming split cycle, lift heavy, fuel adequately, and manage life stress. Now, one area I wanted to touch on is the chronic low testosterone levels in endurance trained men. So the caution here is on chronic high volume endurance training. Obviously, it's very popular to do long distance running, and a lot of people tend to navigate towards ultras and very long endurance training modalities, but years of heavy endurance training can present with persistently low testosterone levels. And the exercise hypogonadal male condition is what is termed. This is not every runner, but it's documented in endurance specialists. So we'll read through this quickly, this study. So sportsmen and women who participate in endurance events perform a tremendous amount of exercise training. For instance, it is not uncommon for a marathon runner or ultra-distance runner to perform 150 to 200 kilometers of intense running per week as part of their regular training. Chronic exercise training to this extent results in positive physiological adaptations that are highly advantageous to the human body. For example, there is an enhancement of maximal cardiac stroke volume, maximal cardiac output, maximal arterial venous oxygen differential, increased erythrocyte number, decreased levels of stored adiposity, and increased skeletal muscle mitochondrial density. Such physiological changes result in an increased human performance capacity. Yet, exercise training to this extent can also place an incredible amount of stress and strain on the athlete's body and result in unwanted physiological responses and health problems. Some of the common unwanted consequences of high volume training include development of overtraining syndrome, condition which can completely compromise the ability of an athlete to perform or lead to musculoskeletal trauma and injury, i.e. pulled muscles, strained muscles, and anything more serious, right? Continuing on with that research, these studies on men show the existence of a select group who, through their exposure to chronic endurance exercise training, have developed alterations in their reproductive hormone profile, principally low resting testosterone levels. The majority of these men display clinically normal levels of testosterone, but the levels are at a very low end of normal and in some cases reach a subclinical status, so testosterone deficiency. Such hormonal changes may result in diminished bone mineral content and spermatogenesis, as well as male infertility problems. The prevalence of these problems seem low, roughly 15 to 25% of men doing chronic endurance training, but as noted, the research studies examining this condition and its consequences are few in literature, hence more research is needed, especially prospective studies, as most information is based upon cross-sectional research. Now, the reason this may happen is because obviously there needs to be more research done on this, but on the women's side of this issue, there is a lot more research papers, and the conclusion with those is overtraining or extreme training leads to a repression or suppression of hormone function. Now, the human body, both male and female, hormone production is a very expensive biological process, right? So if you are overweight, your testosterone levels are suppressed, right? So it's too much and too little. If you overtrain, do too much endurance training, then the same thing happens with your testosterone and hormone levels. They get suppressed because your body is using up too much energy to recover or repair or deal with stress that you're putting on the body. So it's all about finding that Goldilocks zone, which is in the middle. So this also is correlated to body fat. As I've said, if you're overweight and carry too much body fat, that leads to suppression of testosterone and hormones. If you are underweight, especially very low body fat percentage, the same thing happens here. So you need to be in the middle, a Goldilocks zone. Your body likes to feel balanced. Too much and too little is too good, or too much of extremes is not good. And this is why you see that many endurance athletes are very skinny and very low muscle mass and very low body fat percent. And that correlates with low hormone metabolism of the body, right, or in the body. And we can see this in female athletes, where endurance athletes, their iron levels drop significantly, where they have to make sure that they are supplementing an optimal level of iron to put it back in because of the amount of volume they're doing with the endurance training. You also see this in bodybuilding, people who diet down their body fat percent to extreme levels and train for a very long time, over a long period of time. They also experience suppression of their hormones. And you will see that in men, testosterone levels drop. This is why men take PEDs when they do extreme bodybuilding competitions. But also even in amateur women, you see it. They diet down to the point where they suppress their hormones and lose their menstrual cycles, okay? It's because your body doesn't like extremes. It likes to feel not comfortable, but it likes to be in that Goldilocks zone in the middle where it can handle stuff, but also it can upregulate hormone production because it's expensive. It's an expensive process to the body. So looking at your optimized weekly training split for busy men aged 35 plus, the goal needs to be focused on maximizing strength, speed, bone density, and aesthetics with as minimal time as possible. So we're looking at total 3 to 4 sessions per week, roughly 45 to 60 minutes each, and then 1 micro session of play. Yeah. So first session is a sprint day, 1 time per week. Time investment about 35, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Now the why behind this is because it's the highest power neural drive favorable acute anabolic signaling, preserves fast twitch qualities that carry down the energy system continuum. And I'll explain that in a moment. And this is better than long, slow distance, which carries up, right? Sprinting and speed interval work will support longer duration work more than the reverse. So what that means basically is with the conditioning continuum, this area here where you are doing sprint training, high speed training, speed endurance or interval training, where the effort is very, very high, and there's a power element, right? There is a trickle down effect in this continuum. So this work here will positively influence this work here. Yeah, it will increase your capacity to complete endurance training, right? That's not to say that you shouldn't do any endurance training whatsoever, because if you want, if this is something you want to include, then you have to do a little bit of it, but you should spend more time on this work here because this has a trickle down effect and it carries up that stream, right? Now, however, simply doing long interval work and long endurance work does not carry down. It does not increase your speed whatsoever, right? And this is very catabolic, whereas this is more so anabolic. And you get that downstream effect where it influences your aerobic base down this way, but it doesn't happen the other way whatsoever, okay? So looking at warm up 10 to 12 minutes, some mobility, A skips, build up work. And obviously this is where you can include more plyometric stuff and some jumps maybe. And your main set would be about 15 to 20 minutes. You could be looking at 6 to 8 or 10 rounds of sprints. That could be 60 meters, 50 meters, 30 meters if you're doing the outside. And that needs to be at an effort of 90 to 95% effort with a 2 to 3 minute rest. You can walk back for the rest if you're doing outside, or you can simply walk. Option 2 would be to 6 to 10 rounds of 20 seconds of hard sprinting on a curved treadmill or a treadmill with a 2 to 3 minute rest or walking rest. Cool down can also include some plyos or core work, which takes 5 minutes. Now, sprinting is the most anabolic form of cardio, the most time efficient, muscle sparing, and the stimulus with strong hormonal and neuromuscular upside versus high volume steady state that in extremes can depress testosterone levels, as we have covered already. Now, the reality check here is participation in vigorous high impact running drops sharply with age, and most adults rarely sprint. So they rarely partake in this side of the continuum, so don't experience the benefits whatsoever. Looking at the strength training section, so we want to be doing some strength training 1 to 2 times per week, 45 to 60 minutes. Why? Because it's the highest leverage for bone mineral density, muscle, insulin sensitivity, and posture. Template you could run is day 1 and day 2, so lower and push, could be a back squat or trap bar deadlift. You want to be hitting your legs with a compound lift there, something like 4 to 5 sets, 4 sets, 5 to 6 reps. Then we can move to something similar like a dumbbell bench press, 3 times 6 to 8. Then we want to be including some sort of unilateral work for the leg, so split squat variation, 3 sets of 8. Some hamstring work, 3 sets of 8, and then some core or anti-extension work, which could be 3 sets of 8 to 10 or more. Upper day and posterior chain, could be looking at deadlift or RDL, 4x5, pull-ups 4 times AMRAP, and then some overhead press and some back work, so some direct back work with some sort of row. On each of those days, you could include some hypertrophy finishers, which could take 8 to 10 minutes, so 2 to 3 bodybuilding supersets of 8 to 12 reps for shoulders, arms, chest, back to really drive aesthetics. Looking at how we can include plyometrics and jumps. Basically, you want to microdose this inside your strength and sprint training, yeah? So we can look at pogo series, box jumps, broad jumps, looking at something like 20 to 30 total contacts per session as a minimum, I would say, and then 1 to 2 times per week to load bone and keep the elastic qualities. And then the final day would be some sort of play, which would be 1 times a week, 30 to 60 minutes. So the reasoning why behind this is a small-sided sport, 5-a-side football, basketball, touch rugby, paddle or tennis, blends intervals, multi-planar movement, decision-making, and fun, which the adherence is great for that. Plus you get your cardio, plus you get brain stimulant, plus you get the social aspect. Yeah, you get the bonding aspect. which a lot of adults and men miss out on once they stop playing sport. There's nothing to say that you can't play sport on a smaller scale. And in fact, there's a lot of research in sports science and coaching science, but also behavioral science, showing that small-sided games have a great effect on obviously brain plasticity and also the social bonding amongst men and women, right? And then you learn to get better at decision making, working as a team, but also you get the health benefits as well in a high intensity environment. And there isn't as much strain as trying to play like a full-sided game, right? So recreational small-sided football improves VO2 max, blood pressure, and metabolic health, and racket sports are associated with lower all-cause and cardiovascular disease mortality in big cohorts. Looking at the brain plasticity angle, learning/playing new skills changes the brain. Classic studies show adults increase gray matter after learning a new motor skill, or even maintaining some sort of play, right? And every time you play a small game, it's different every time. So you're going to get that brain plasticity because there's going to be a new challenge there. You're going to have to learn to navigate the game and your teammates in different environments every time you play. Classic studies show adults increase gray matter after learning a new motor skill. Lifelong skill-based play is linked with better cognitive preservation. Okay, thanks for watching. Really hope you enjoyed that one. If you're ready to take your performance to the next level and upgrade your training, your strategy, your behavior change with my coaching product and services, do reach out. Please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next one.